Hi, my name is Deanna Kaufman, and I'm a managing consultant with FedEx Customer Solutions, which is a part of FedEx that helps our customers with their supply chain challenges and objectives. There's so many different ways that a supply chain can enable a successful retail venture. If you want to consider it this way, and we're here at the NRF research shows that consistently shoppers think about logistics decisions as they're shopping. The most important things today especially are about shipping speed, about what the price is that shopper's going to pay for something, when a consumer's going to get something, and what the returns experience looks like. So these are logistics decisions that actually shoppers make as they're purchasing. And if a retailer is not very clear about what that process looks like as somebody is shopping, then it results in a lot of cart abandonment and also dissatisfied customers, which drives down customer lifetime value. I think that the biggest supply chain challenges are what's the right shipping speed, what's the right way to go about charging for that, and what the thresholds might be, what does your returns process look like? And also too is what are your visibility options, because if a shopper can't control the experience and it's no longer convenient, then you risk that customer experience being very poor. Some of the best practices that retailers and direct-to-consumer brands can apply really have to do with understanding what their shoppers want as part of that logistics experience, and that's both outbound shipping as well as returns. So when we stop and consider it, it would be really getting close to the shopper in terms of asking them what they want, being very clear about what the cost will be for that without overwhelming them with choice, making the cost decisions very tight, and making the returns process and the visibility around that very clear. With regard to whether or not supply chain should be outsourced or self-managed, a lot of it depends on the complexity of the supply chain for the retailer. A good example would be a startup retailer. They may not have the know-how or the systems capabilities in order to successfully manage their own supply chain. But when you start to scale and grow and have the kind of complexity that somebody like a very large retail brand would have, sometimes if they choose a strategy that requires a lot of providers, then they have to really manage that themselves. If they're going to tighten up their supply chain and have fewer suppliers, then a lot of times that can be better self-managed or even outsourced, depending on what it looks like for the investment model they want to make. It's really interesting. The face of last mile is going to continue to evolve, largely because when you look at supply chain, the hardest cost to take out of the supply chain is always the last mile. And that's because density to the retail home is very hard to drive up, right? Is that for most people, if you're not, that big company in Seattle, for most retailers, you're only sending one item at any given time to a residence. So the way that I think the industry will be changing the face of that is to be driving costs down with more autonomous vehicles. We will be looking at ways to drive density up, maybe through synchronizing delivery. And we're also going to continue to provide convenient pickup locations that are maybe on shoppers' flight paths as they commute, or things like that would drive up the density of pickup volume and reduce the actual transit to a house. The top trends that really impact the changes that you see really have to do with shopper demand, right? Is that their experience continues to change and evolve. And as we've heard multiple times here at NRF, there's been so many changes in the last couple of years in terms of demand for speed, for lower cost shipping, and for greater visibility. So I think that what you're going to find is that shoppers are going to continue to drive that demand, and as more disruptive technologies come into play, the expectations are going to keep increasing until it's almost instantaneously shipped. In the next next 2 years, I actually think that most of the innovations above and beyond autonomous vehicles, and not many people realize this, but a lot of folks have seen video of drones. A lot of the drone testing that's been very successful is outside of the United States because there's still regulatory challenges to overcome here. Above and beyond seeing autonomous vehicles come to market, I think that the other changes that you're going to see actually don't have to do with logistics. It probably has to do with fintech. Because if some of the fintech technologies take off and increase the ability for payments to be done in a simplified way, what you're going to see is the velocity of sales increase, and that's going to just keep driving the speed of retail. What these trends and innovations mean for business and brands means that they have to really up their game in terms of what they do to integrate those technologies into their practice. It's a sad truth that in retail, particularly for legacy brands, a lot of retailers have a lot of legacy IT systems. And for them to be able to take advantage of the new processes or to build more efficient systems and supply chains, they have to have the technology underpinning it in order to be successful. I think that what these trends mean for consumers is that everything's going to keep getting more convenient. And, shoppers really have a feeling about if it's convenient, if I can order this, I'm going to go ahead and order this because there's a very low barrier for them to actually enter that, purchase that, and experience that. And I think what you're going to see is a diversification of a shopper's need for experience, is that when they want convenience, they're going to order online. And when they want to experience a brand and have a fun experience, they're going to physically get up and go someplace. But I think you're going to see further differentiation between those two experiences. For the brands to really take advantage of these trends is, again, it goes back a lot to technology and really understanding their shopper. And what's really interesting about understanding their shopper is I think that there's an overemphasis on what other brands do, but not understanding what their own shoppers want. As a very good example is some retailers, shoppers actually don't need to have very fast delivery, and other retailer shoppers expect it. So knowing your customer and tailoring that experience using IT systems to deliver the right type of service is really what's going to make a difference in terms of taking advantage of the trends. The main drivers for cost really has to do with handling and distance when you think about outbound shipping. So some of the ways to drive down those costs is really to get physically closer to the customer, as well as creating more efficient and more scalable systems in order to actually do that outbound delivery. On the return side, returns, as many retailers will tell you, is typically handled very inefficiently. And so really to drive down costs around returns, more solutions have to be found or implemented that have to do with consolidating those returns and potentially outsourcing those returns handling to other parties who will be more efficient at handling it, even disposing of it on a secondary market.